That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank
really,
you.
really, really great.
Thank you.
So, you know, I guess maybe what we can do in discussing this incredible piece that you shared. Is this the first time you've shared this publicly?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's only the third time I've seen it, actually. Yeah.
It's such an incredible piece of work. I mean, not just for IFS, but for humanity, you know, to see that. And just the feeling inside of me when I was watching, which is of such deep gratitude for your life's work, for your presence here and there, and then just the feeling of incredible hopefulness that if we can take the wisdom of IFS and this work of healing, you know, exiled parts of healing unresolved trauma and bring that to the world. Myself, having just been in Israel for almost a month in January, just seeing this was so moving because you see the, you know, the polarization. So when we were in an Arab-Israeli town, and we're in people's homes, the pain they were talking about, just like he was speaking of, is so great. And then to be able to do that work, well, individually for sure, but then in that collective, like you did here, would just be such an incredible gift. So I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you.
Really, really beautiful.
Very honored by those words.
As I was watching this, I was thinking, you know, we've met, and you know, the idea is we're just going to kind of explore things with each other. But then there's the larger systems issue of, you know, how can there be a meeting of IFS, which emerged from deep clinical reflection and practical clinical application and seeing practical clinical results. All that's fantastic. And then interpersonal neurobiology, IPNB, grew up from a science synthesis combined with clinical applications and seeing how those work together. And then we're trying to see how these two worlds might influence each other, interact, you know, inform each other. And so if it's okay with you, I can spend a couple moments.
Absolutely.
If you want, trying to do what the one of your members, all these questions, I can try to address the questions I recall of his, which were so great in looking at this video. So what, if we just get a little bit scientific about it, away from the emotional power of it that I think we're all in the room feeling, at the most basic level, if we just get really fundamental, you're sitting in a room, there's probably other people too, but at least 4 of you, a translator, you, Noah, and his name is Jamal?
Yeah, Jamal.
Okay. And what's passing among the 4 of you is called energy. So someone in the break said, please help me talk to my, maybe I shouldn't say the details because it was a private little conversation, but help me talk to somebody because they don't believe energy is passing between us in a relationship. And you know, that's what happens from a scientific point of view, like between me and you right now. And just to stay with the video, so there's 4 of you, and energy is passing. That's the most fundamental thing we can say. It takes the form of scientifically measurable things, like, you know, air molecules moving for sound, photons moving for light, and I'm sure there were smells in the room for chemicals and stuff like that. But just to stay with light and sound. So there's the presence that you bring, so you're receptive, and Noah and Jamal are trying to be receptive, but they're also reactive. So the next thing we can say is that the nervous systems in each body have 2 fundamental states, receptive and reactive. So there's a little thing, we won't do it nowadays because it takes too much time, but you can say no, no, no repeatedly, and then yes, yes, yes. And the no creates a reactive state. The yes is an open state. So Steve Porges' book in our series called The Polyvagal Theory kind of, you know, explores in hundreds of pages the science of receptivity versus reactivity. So when the receptive state is turned on, it activates a part of the nervous system, because you're always asking me, how's the brain doing this? And that's what all these questions were about. It turns on what Steve Porges, P-O-R-G-E-S, calls the social engagement system. The muscles relax so you can see it. And the whole physiology of the person basically goes like this. So that's the receptive state. Reactive is kind of the opposite. It shuts down from social engagement. It activates the brain stems 4Fs, fight, flight, freeze, or faint, depending on the person's temperament and history and all that kind of stuff. You can have combinations of all those. And involves the limbic areas, amygdala's response with fear and all that kind of thing. So at a very minimum, what I was seeing at the very start was energy and information is being shared among you. And there's different levels of receptivity, receptive states and reactive states. Then as you were going through, and we didn't see the whole video, but Noah brings up the thing about the Holocaust. Now, I used to be the psychiatric consultant for a group called the Survivors of the Shoah Foundation. We collected 55,000 interviews, and part of my job was to go to different concentration camps and experience what that was like. So I had my own, physiological reaction when she started bringing that up, and when Israel, it was like that too. So I kind of had to, just in receiving this, had to filter that through my own reactivity to get back to receptivity in just her bringing that up. And all these layers of memory in me came up. So then, anyway, I tried to keep on watching. So for her, she's saying, hey, I hear, you're a marginalized, oppressed person, and so am I. Look at my people from, the Holocaust. So, and this is basically from a relational point of view, she's saying, you're reactive, I'm reactive too, and I have a right to be reactive, and you have a right to be reactive, so let's just be reactive. Right. And I don't know if it felt that way at that moment.
That it felt more like the need to be witnessed for the Holocaust was getting in the way of her being able to be present to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So her need to be a witness for the Holocaust is saying, look at me, rather than being receptive to him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that would be a kind of a version of reactive, so she's not receptive. And you beautifully start working that, asking her if it's okay, and then he talks about his pain. So what I'd like to do is focus on that incredible piece at the end, when we advanced forward. And so in interpersonal neurobiology, the frame is the mind is both relational and fully embodied. So this video would be like a magnificent example of seeing all layers of the mind at work in the masterful therapy that you were facilitating. And I know if you're going to try to go to neuroscientists, they're going to get very agitated if you talk about the mind being relational and not just brain activity. So just want to be aware that's the way I speak, but 98% of neuroscientists would tell me I'm out of my mind, not that they would define it anything more than brain activity. Right. So I would say, how could I be out of it if
that's all it is?
Is that all it is? Anyway, so I just, I'll speak from what I think is a scientific frame, but just know that scientists don't usually talk this way.
Right.
So I just want to protect you. My protective part is trying to really be really careful about that.
Right.
So, but I think you see it here. So in interpersonal neurobiology, we also say that if the mind is the self-organizing, emergent, embodied relational process that's regulating energy and information flow, then your presence, attunement, resonance, and trust that you're creating, you, Dick, in the session there, is creating this mind field. I don't know what different that's called, but actually it sounds too much like a mind field. But this sphere of the mind that is giving Noah and Jamal a sense that, oh, there's a presence here, which isn't like on the streets of Jerusalem. There's a presence here, and it's also Esalen, but that's probably helpful to be out, away from city life and everything like that. So, and you are beautifully tuning into their internal state. So that, and resonating. I mean, you can feel your empathy, your compassion, Dick. So you're creating that, and I'm sure the translator was busy translating. She had that too. You could just sense her receptivity. Right. So there's presence, attunement, resonance with the two of you, for the two of them. So it's shifting I don't even know what the word, the collective mind that's there in the room, make it more likely, there's a probability issue, to be, rather than being reactive, you're making it sort of, you're inviting, from a parallel distributed processing science point of view, you'd say you're intentionally creating what's called an attractor basin, is the way you talk about from a PDP point of view, to make receptivity more likely to happen than if you said, come on, the Holocaust didn't happen, or something like that.
Right.
So you are creating an attractor basin, which in a way is like the mirror image of the peaks and stuff, but it's the same idea. More likely that's going to happen, which is beautiful. And then Jamal starts saying, well, I feel this pain here. So from an interpersonal neurobiology point of view, we would say at that moment, there are these layers of integration that have a feeling of being blocked, and you, maybe not even thinking about layers of integration, beautifully peel them through and walk through them and integrate in them. So just to walk through them, one is the integration of consciousness. So by talking about the self and parts, you're in a way inviting the differentiation of the plane of possibility from those plateaus and peaks. So that's, even without doing a meditation or anything, you're kind of, just that inference from IFS is an invitation to consider integration of consciousness, which is really, really cool, right? So that would be our way of putting the integration spin from science on the parts self relationship of IFS. So just to walk it, is this okay? We're going this amount of detail? So then you go, that's the integration of consciousness.
Right.
The second domain of integration is called bilateral integration. So bilateral just, and this again is a neuroscience no-no, but just because scientists say something doesn't mean that that's scientific. So we try to look at the deep science that we believe is the science of it from hundreds of years, of looking at this from science, that there is a difference between left and right. And so when you're speaking to him and say something like, or to Noah, is there a part of you that could allow the rock to be present, and the one that wants to smash, can you go to the side? So if we just tease this apart, you're using very specific language, and I don't speak Hebrew, but I would hope that the IFS leader, who's also a translator, was super specific. So at one point, Jamal says, this mode of mine, at least that's the way she translated it, which I thought was really an interesting word we might consider that you could think about using for IFS, because mode is a cool thing that, no one knows what it means, but that's the good thing about it. It's that it's like, it's not really an aspect, it's not really a part, it's like right in between. It's more like a rhythm probably, or something like that. So he says mode, which I thought was really fascinating. I thought, that's great. So anyway, whatever you call it, so let's just stay with parts. So this part, this modality, whatever, it is, you're speaking directly with language. So the left hemisphere is dominant for the linear, linguistic, specific use of language, for syllogistic reasoning, which is going to look for cause-effect relationships with things. So you're speaking straight to the left. You're not ignoring it. Like, so in body-based therapy, you go straight for the representations of the body in the right hemisphere. But you're using language, which, for me as an integrationist is fantastic. But it's also in your nonverbal signals, which are dominant in the right. So you're offering this kind of beautiful bilateral integration process. And so if it ends up being true that the protective modes are left mode and the vulnerable modes are the right, let's say that's 5 years from now, you do the research or someone does it and they say, look, wow, amazingly, your exiled, vulnerable, need-based parts, which are body-centered, are right dominant, and the other ones are left dominant. Even if it's a mode, let's just talk left mode, right mode, which are the way the scientists talk about it. Right there, you're connecting to both modes. You're saying, something, this left mode you got going on, chill out for a moment, if you could, and let's go into the body. So the amazing thing is the right hemisphere is the only side of the brain that receives the inside of the body. It is freaky, but it's true that the feeling in your gut, inside your body, I'm not talking about the feeling of the left side of your skin or the right side of your skin that crosses over, but the inside of your body only goes to the right hemisphere, which for some reason people don't talk about, right? So what you're doing there is you're saying, Jamal, you've got this feeling in your body. Can we let your left hemisphere want to smash it, which to put it into neurospeak, it would be like, hey, I'm a left hemisphere, I don't feel anything.
Exactly.
So I'm going to tell you to shut up.
That's right.
Like that,
That's
right?
Exactly.
So it's like this battle of the hemispheres.